Welcome to the Blind Android Users channel. This is your source for everything Android, tutorials and demos, all from a blindness perspective. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more content like this.
Now I'm going to introduce permissions in our next demonstration.
Hello everyone, I'm Ed Green, and with your permission I'm going to show you another part of the Apps category in our Settings app. You might have noticed what I did there. We are in fact going to talk about permissions. So what are permissions? When you install an app, it may well need to access different parts of the operating system, its functionality, your data, or indeed other apps on your device, and these are called permissions. They'll often pop up when you first open an app when you install it. A phone app might ask you if it can make and manage phone calls. A messaging app might ask if it can manage your contacts. And a GPS app might ask if it can access location services. Normally these are pretty straightforward, but Android gives you quite a lot of control over what different apps want to do, so you should pay attention to the permissions you're granting apps, because not all apps need the permissions they ask for. And indeed, if an app asks for too many permissions, you may want to seriously think about whether that app is indeed one you want on your phone. Is it trying to do other things? One app that needs a lot of permissions to function is obviously TalkBack or Android Accessibility Suite. That needs basically all the permissions the operating system can give it. It needs to be able to read everything that's happening on your screen and get really under the skin of it. And Google has allowed accessibility services to have these permissions. Other apps that need quite extensive permissions have taken advantage of this and masqueraded as accessibility services. That's sometimes fine because the functionality that those apps provide warrant those extra permissions, and the only way they can get it is indeed to pass themselves off as accessibility services. Other times it's really not fine, and Google is starting to clamp down on that. I'm going to show you what permissions look like for an app. We're going in, as you know, we're doing the app settings at the minute, so this is the way we're going in. So I'm going to fire up my phone and show you what we have here.
Navigate up button. Double recently opened apps heading and list. Hyperion 5 minutes ago. Facebook 5 minutes ago. Double tap to activate.
I'm going to look at Facebook. That's a relatively controversial app, so we'll see what happens here.
Settings. App info out of list.
And I have various options on this resulting screen.
Navigate up button. More options button. Facebook and list. Open button. Disable button. Force stop button. Notifications off. Permission location and nearby devices. Double tap to activate.
It's permissions we want, so I'm going to go into permission.
App permissions. Back button out of list. Double tap more options button.
Now, before we go too much further, I should point out that Google has improved the permissions experience through various versions of Android. When you in the early days, you had to accept permissions before you even downloaded an app. And various versions of Android since have increased the granularity of permissions to help you control privacy, because Google obviously comes under quite a lot of flack, being a predominantly ad-based service, that it doesn't care about privacy. I'm running Android 12, so what you may see in your permissions section might be different. Google's made strides again to protect privacy in Android 12. So if you're on 10 or 11, this might look a little bit different. So I'm in Facebook's permissions now, and I'm going to swipe right.
Facebook heading and list. Allowed heading. Location last access 2227. Double tap to activate.
So we're on location now. I'm going to tap on this and see what we have.
Location permission. Back button out of list. Facebook. Location access for this app. Not selected. Allow all the time. Radio button 1 of 4 and list 4 items. Selected. Allow only while using the app. Radio button 2 of 4. Not selected. Ask every time. Radio button 3 of 4. Not selected. Don't allow. Radio button 4 of 4.
So those are what you can change. And theoretically, if it's set to while using the app, it should only really be able to access your location while it's in the foreground. Let me see what time it is.
System UI 2235 out of list.
Possibly that's right, although it said it was at 2227, and I'm not sure Facebook was in the foreground then. So, I mean, it is running in the app switcher, so perhaps that's reasonable.
Use precise location. When precise location is off, apps can access your approximate location. Off. Switch. Out of list. Double tap to activate.
So do you want to use precise or approximate location? I think that is an Android 12 feature and quite helpful if you want an app to know roughly where you are, but not exactly.
See all apps with this permission. Double tap to
And
activate.
you can also see all apps with this permission from here.
Location permission. Back button. App permissions. Location. Last access 2227. Enlist. Nearby devices. Accessed in past 24 hours. Double tap to activate.
So this is the next permission that Facebook has. The nearby devices. Let's see what this does.
Nearby devices permission. Back button. Out of list. Facebook. Nearby devices access for this app. Selected. Allow. Radio button. 1 of 2. Enlist. Not selected. Don't allow. Radio button. See all apps with this permission. Out of list. App permissions. Nearby devices. Accessed in past 24 hours. Enlist. Double tap to activate. Not allowed. Heading.
And now we get into the not allowed permission for Facebook.
Calendar. Double tap to activate. Camera. Double tap. Contacts. Microphone. Phone. Storage. Double. Unused apps. Heading. Remove permissions and free up space. On. Switch. Double tap to activate. To protect your data, if the app is unused for a few months, the following permissions will be removed. Location and nearby devices.
So there you have it. There are a bunch of permissions I could grant the app, and they were listed back there around calendar and phone calls and all the rest of it. It doesn't automatically mean that Facebook asked for those and I denied them. It could simply be that I am able to grant those permissions to Facebook. It might not be that the app asked for it, although sometimes an app will ask for permissions and you can deny those permissions. So that's an illustration of what you can do with permissions in Android. It is quite powerful. It is quite granular. So do you think about the permissions that you might want to give an app before you actually grant them? And sometimes come in here and have a little look and see what you can potentially turn off or deny the app and still get it to work.
What I'll say about this, a little bit like with the previous item on notifications, we'll return to what I consider to be the second half of permissions in either the next episode or a couple of episodes' time when we come to something called special app access, because you may need to go in there and in the apps may ask you to turn on things in there that will enable the app to work well. So do keep an eye out for special app access. I've had to use it at least 3 times to troubleshoot it, and when I talk about that, when we get to it, I will highlight those different special app access categories that are important.
One thing I would like to comment on this permissions is that in later versions of Android, Google has nicely polished the permissions, and they are even going to do something in Android 13. Back in the old days, apps would just sometimes accept the permissions or just run without even asking you for permissions. And then when you go to settings, you would see that the app is accessing all the permissions. Also, permissions is the number one security problem with Android. So for example, if you have a calculator app, a third-party calculator app, which is asking you for media accessing permission one time, that is okay because it may want to write something to your storage. But if it asks for permissions to manage your location or access your location or manage phone calls or any other permission that is not related to calculator, you seriously will have to doubt the app. And it's my recommendation that you uninstall the app because it is a security risk having the app ask for some unrelated permissions. Also, if there are any apps not made for Android 12 or 11, and if you don't allow it permissions, some permissions, the app may break and may not run properly or may not run at all. So if you have such apps, it's best to see for alternatives, or unfortunately, you'll have to grant them all the permissions.
Thanks for listening to another clip from the Blind Android Users channel. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you're notified of every new material that we upload. Thanks again for listening to the Blind Android Users channel.